Alright, so we have some controversy in the community, and while I don't tend to make videos about this sort of thing, I think this one is pretty important. But before we get into all that, I do want to disclose my biases, and although I'll do my best to be fair in this video, I want you all to understand where I'm coming from. I've been a fan of Rationality Rules since he started his channel. When my channel was demonetized, he stepped up and pledged a few bucks per month to my Patreon, for which I was very thankful. I don't hold any ill will towards him, I don't hate him, and up until fairly recently I thought he did solid work. Then I started noticing odd moments in some of his videos that raised some red flags for me. For example, he began to praise right-wing commentators before disagreeing with them. Here's a few examples.
Love him or loathe him, I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say that Ben Shapiro is one of the greatest debaters around. He's intelligent, quick-witted, excellent at avoiding distractions, is amply armed with references, and, of course, he wields some fantastic one-liners.
And
I have the distinct feeling that I'm going to aggravate a few Molyneux fans with this video. But, despite the fact that I quite enjoy a lot of Molyneux's work, a bad argument is a bad argument.
And seriously, you enjoy, quote, a lot of Molyneux's work? A lot? I mean, seriously? But this isn't a video about Molyneux, so let's not get sidetracked. Alright, so that's the end of what I wanted to say about my biases. On March 29th, Steven released a video titled The Athletic Edge of Transgender Women and Why It's Unfair. At the time of this writing, it had garnered 234,000 views. And to put it mildly, I think it's an awful piece of work. I think it's alarmist, ignorant, riddled with errors, and can easily be used to fuel anti-trans sentiment. I think he was irresponsible to release that video without doing the proper research, and I 100% oppose it and hope he makes a correction video in the near future. In that video, you can find alarmist clips like this one.
In a nutshell, I find the arguments and logic that currently permit transgender women to compete against biological women to be remarkably flawed, and I'm convinced that unless quickly rectified, this will kill women's sport.
And this one.
I don't want to see the day when women's athletics is dominated by Y chromosomes, but without a change in policy, that is precisely what's going to happen.
Now, this video isn't really about debunking that video, but the events that surround the release of it. But if you'd like to see a sourced rebuttal, you can check out the one made by Essence of Thought, who did a better job than I could have. Link will be in the description. Moving on from there, on April 6th, Essence of Thought released his video rebuttal, and Steven saw the video because he commented saying that EOT had misrepresented him, and he wasn't going to watch the rest of the video. I asked him to reconsider, and he said he would at least read the sources provided. So at this point, there's really no excuse. He had the sources, and if he had read them like he said he would, it should have been readily apparent that statements like this,
I don't want to see the day when women's athletics is dominated by Y chromosomes, but without a change in policy, that is precisely what's going to happen,
weren't justified. Fast forward to April 27th, and Faithless Forum arrives. Some of the prominent atheist creators gathered together, and reportedly, quite a few of them discussed RR's video. I'm guessing that there were several chats over the course of the conference, and on May 3rd, Steven released a tweet saying, quote, "Hey all, I'm currently working on a video in which I clarify my views on transgender athletes, including how my views have altered, and publicly apologize for the ignorant language that I used and mistakes that I made. Please PM me if you have more info for me to digest." At this point, I'm not sure why he didn't change the title and description of the video to reflect that he no longer stood behind his words. This would have taken only a few minutes of his time and would have gone a long way towards showing that he no longer stood behind his video. But instead, he did nothing besides release that tweet, and the video continued being shared, talked about, and viewed without anyone, besides those who might follow him on Twitter, realizing that his views had changed. Even if you agree with RR's video, the fact that he said he had made significant mistakes and used ignorant language should make it clear to you that the right course of action would have been to take a few minutes to edit the title and description box to reflect this. Especially since his video is about a tiny minority group who already gets a lot of hate online and off. On May 9th, the ACA, or the Atheist Community of Austin, released the following statement to their Facebook page and website. Quote, "Recently, the ACA Board of Directors was made aware that guest host co-host Stephen Woodford, YouTuber Rationality Rules, had made ignorant and transphobic videos and statements on his social media platforms in the weeks leading up to his appearance on ACA shows. We would like to make it clear that we do not share or condone his opinions or attitudes, and that we fully and actively support equal rights for the LGBTQIA+ community. We acknowledge that the ACA did a poor job showing our support by allowing Mr. Woodford to make appearances on our shows without either addressing his controversial views on air or asking him to refrain from appearances until he released a clarifying statement on his channel. We also failed to communicate our feelings and intentions in a timely manner to our volunteers and fans. We sincerely apologize for the pain and anguish our failings have caused our viewers, volunteers, and our ACA family all over the world. We love the trans community and are deeply distressed to have caused anyone harm. We have let you down and we intend to do our best to earn back your trust. The ACA is working quickly and diligently to ensure that this kind of mistake does not happen again. We will be coordinating with hosts, co-hosts, and staff to communicate any potential issues with a guest well in advance of when they are set to appear on any ACA production. The ACA will not knowingly allow any ACA production or publication to be used in a manner that's inconsistent with our mission and position statements. We would also love to hear from you, our ACA family. If you have any ideas or feedback on how we can do better, please email us." End quote. And this is huge because the ACA is respected in the atheist community, and they're at least partially responsible for shows such as The Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen, which we'll get into in a minute. First off though, I want to get in a few of my opinions about the ACA statement. I don't for a second believe that the ACA didn't know about Steven's trans athlete video before making his appearances on their shows. Admittedly, I have no concrete evidence to back that up, but I think it's ridiculous to think that someone didn't look at his most recent videos before inviting him on their shows. Hell, I used to run a rinky-dink amateur hour podcast, except for Shannon Q, who wasn't an amateur. And I would scope out the most recent videos on a guest page before having them on as a guest. Now, maybe the board didn't know. I guess that's a possibility, but I find even that hard to believe. I would very much have liked to see him challenged on his views on those shows, but that opportunity is now gone. While I don't necessarily have a problem with the ACA releasing the statement attempting to distance themselves from Steven, their hands are far from clean. The very next day after the ACA denounced Steven, on May 10th, both Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience released clips featuring Rationality Rules. Hardly the sort of thing you'd expect if you're trying to distance yourself from someone. I mean, denouncing someone and then making money off their appearances on your shows is a pretty shitty thing to do. In response, RR released a video response with a pretty pretentious thumbnail that compares himself to Galileo and the ACA to the Inquisition. But yeah, let's put that aside and look at the video. I'm going to skip over the beginning where Steven basically says he enjoyed his time as a guest of the ACA, that it was a great honor to sit beside Matt Dillahunty and achieve the greatest all-time viewership in the history of the Atheist Experience show. As always, the link will be in the description, so you can go watch it for yourself.
But once I left the ACA's warm hospitality to fly back to England, their board of directors released a public statement denouncing me as transphobic and heavily implied that I'm opposed to the LGBT+ community.
Except that's not really what happened, right? They didn't say you were transphobic, but that you had, quote, made ignorant and transphobic videos and statements on a social media platform, end quote. And they didn't really imply that you were against the LGBT+ community either. They said they support the LGBT+ community, and that they didn't share or condone your opinions or attitudes. I'm guessing in reference to your trans athlete video, which you admit contains ignorant language and mistakes. They also say in the paragraph after this one that they should have challenged you on air or refrained from having you appear on their shows until you had released a clarifying statement on your channel, which sounds like a reasonable request since, once again, you admit that your video contains ignorant language and mistakes.
Which, as anyone who's watched a handful of my videos will tell you, is slanderous hogwash. I've defended the LGBT+ community countless times throughout my short career, and whenever a religion or anyone denigrates them, I point it out and I crush it where it stands. I mean, I even have a video in which I explain precisely why homosexuality is natural, and I frequently emphasise, while many won't, the fact that there's a significant amount of Muslims that harbour harmful anti-LGBT+ views that desperately need to be addressed.
Right, but you can support gay marriage or homosexuality and still harbor biases or discriminatory views on trans people. You can also say ignorant things about trans people and unintentionally fuel anti-trans bigotry. Just because you've been in the corner of the LGBT+ community in the past doesn't mean you didn't mess up here.
Now, to be as clear as I possibly can, I know that I made a few big mistakes within my recent video on transgender athletes, and as I've stated publicly, I'm working on a video in which I express my altered views and apologise for what I got wrong. But that's the thing, I was wrong on some things, not transphobic. I have no issue whatsoever with transgender people, and I have and will continue to try and foster an environment that accepts them for who they are, and anyone who's paying attention knows this.
You can say transphobic things without actively trying to be a transphobe. If I'm ultra-religious, I might sincerely believe that same-sex marriage will harm the institution of marriage. I might openly oppose same-sex marriage and have no issue with gay sex, but that doesn't make my opposition of same-sex marriage any less homophobic. You're still using reactionary, alarmist rhetoric, in this case, that it will ruin marriage for everyone, based on crappy reasoning and evidence, which is homophobic. Sincerely believing your homophobic ideas doesn't make you exempt from the fact that you're spreading anti-gay, anti-same-sex marriage rhetoric. The good news is that, as my fiance likes to say, when you know better, you can do better. You can still apologize, which you've partially done, and correct your mistake. From that point forward, you can attempt to do better. And that's fine. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all do crappy stuff from time to time, and we can all do better.
However, I also believe that there are difficult issues that need to be discussed, and I firmly believe that those who are labelling anyone who recognise these issues as transphobic are being counterproductive. Anyhow, yesterday, the ACA and its productions published a statement from their board of directors in which they accused me of making transphobic videos, despite the fact that I've only made one video, and they claim that I've published numerous transphobic statements on my social media platforms, though they neglected to provide any examples because, to put it bluntly, there isn't any. Not one, zero. Indeed, an organisation that prides itself on free thought and substantiating their views exercised neither of these values when they denounced me.
Now, this is a fair criticism. The ACA did say videos and statements, plural, and they didn't provide any examples to back that up. I can only guess that they're referring to Stephen promoting his videos on various social media platforms, but regardless, they should have done better here.
Now, evidently, some of the ACA's staff and members felt it was necessary to distance the ACA from me because they either didn't agree with my views or they found me and my views to be abhorrent. And while I understand that the ACA had to make its position clear, they could have done this so easily without throwing me under a bus. They could have simply said, "We recognise that there has been some controversy surrounding Stephen Woodford's position on transgender athletes, and we would like to make clear that the guests who appear on our show do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of the ACA. We understand that his views have changed, and we are eagerly awaiting his next response." That, or something like that, would have been far more professional than making unsubstantiated accusations.
Like I said earlier, I'm not against the ACA making the initial statement, but he's right that they could have done so more intelligently. They could have provided examples, they could have waited for Stephen's correction video, they could have not released it and challenged him on their shows. There's a lot of things they could have done better, but didn't. However, a part of me is glad that a major atheist entity recognized that Stephen's video was poorly researched and potentially harmful, and took steps to distance themselves from it. I wish this could happen more often in the atheist community. But yeah, this could have been handled better, that's for sure. I'm going to skip ahead a bit because there's just one more point in Stephen's video I want to address.
What's more, the ACA's following statements off. We would like to make it clear that we do not share or condone his opinions or attitudes, and that we fully and actively support equal rights for the LGBTQIA+ community. And we love the trans community and are deeply distressed to have caused anyone harm, is, to me, incredibly offensive, because it heavily implies that I'm against the LGBT+ community, which is demonstrably not true.
Well, you put out a poorly researched video on a delicate topic, which included alarmist anti-trans rhetoric. I mean, you might not have done so with the intention of doing harm, but that doesn't mean that you didn't do harm. Your video can be used to bolster anti-trans sentiment. What's actually offensive is your video. Anyway, there's a bit more to that video, and you can go watch it on Rationality Rules channel if you like. On the bright side, yesterday RR changed the title of his video so that it at least informs new viewers that it contains errors. But I want to end this video with a personal message to Stephen. I'm not sure if he'll watch it, but I'm going to do so anyway. Stephen, I'm pulling for you. I sincerely hope that you correct your mistakes and continue to evolve your opinion. Although I may seem ultra critical of you in this video, I'm not doing so because I hold any personal grudge. I can't crawl into your head and ferret out your intentions. But I don't think you're some anti-LGBT+ supervillain either. I think you made some mistakes, and I strongly believe that you intend to fix them and grow from this experience. I look forward to watching your correction video, and I wish you all the best. Cheers.